Just in, a sudden shift is unfolding near Crimea. Ukraine appears to be making a calculated move. Russia reacts with full high alert. Military channels light up within minutes. Officials stay cautious. Silence everywhere. But ground indicators tell a powerful story. Why is Crimea suddenly under pressure? What forced Russia to react so fast? And what happens next could change everything. Watch till the end. This moment truly matters. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are covering a rapidly developing situation that has captured global attention. According to emerging reports and monitoring data, Ukrainian forces appear to be increasing pressure toward Crimea, triggering an immediate high alert response from Russian command structures. It is critical to clarify from the start that active conflict environments produce fast-changing information. So this analysis focuses on observable indicators, strategic patterns, and expert assessments rather than unverified battlefield claims. Crimea remains one of the most sensitive and fortified regions in the entire conflict, serving as a strategic hub for naval operations, air defense networks, and regional logistics. Any sudden activity linked to this area instantly raises alarms across Moscow, Kiev, and international security circles. Recent indicators include changes in airspace control, elevated military communications, and increased defensive readiness reported by regional observers. While no official statement confirms a full-scale assault, the shift to high alert itself signals serious concern at senior levels. Ukraine has consistently stated that pressure on Crimea is part of its broader long-term strategy, often relying on disruption, precision actions, and psychological pressure rather than immediate territorial advances. In this video, we will break down what a sudden push realistically means, why Russia reacts so strongly to any Crimea-related threat, and how this moment could shape the next phase of the war. Stay with us for clear, calm, and fact-based analysis. To understand why these developments matter, we must examine why Crimea holds such overwhelming strategic importance for Russia. Beyond symbolism, the peninsula functions as a command center for operations across southern Ukraine and the Black Sea. It hosts major naval facilities, air bases, missile defense systems, and supply routes that support ongoing military activities. Since 2014, Russia has invested heavily in fortifying Crimea, building layered defenses designed to detect threats early and respond rapidly. This means even limited Ukrainian actions can trigger maximum defensive reactions. Analysts tracking open-source intelligence have recently observed patterns that often precede heightened alert levels, including aircraft redeployments, reinforced air defense positioning, and tightened control over civilian movement. None of these signals alone confirm an attack, but together they suggest preparation for potential escalation. Ukraine's approach toward Crimea has historically emphasized pressure rather than occupation, using drones, long-range strikes, sabotage, and information warfare to stretch Russian defenses. A sudden push does not necessarily involve ground troops crossing borders. It can involve targeted disruption aimed at forcing Russia to divert resources and attention. This strategy seeks to undermine confidence and create uncertainty within Russian command structures, which explains the rapid shift to high alert status. Understanding this context helps viewers separate dramatic headlines from realistic military behavior, and highlights why Crimea remains one of the most sensitive flashpoints in the entire conflict. Another key reason this situation is gaining attention is the timing. Recent weeks have shown increased Ukrainian efforts to apply pressure across multiple fronts simultaneously, stretching Russian defenses and forcing rapid decision-making. When activity appears near Crimea, it suggests a deliberate attempt to test response speed and readiness. Military experts explain that modern conflicts rely heavily on reaction time, not just troop numbers. The faster a command structure shifts to high alert, the more resources it must commit, often exposing vulnerabilities elsewhere. Recent monitoring data shows heightened electronic activity, including changes in radar usage and communication frequency, which often indicate preparation rather than routine drills. At the same time, Russia's public messaging remains cautious, avoiding dramatic language while quietly reinforcing defensive posture. This contrast between official calm and operational urgency is telling. Ukraine's strategy has increasingly focused on creating uncertainty, making Russian planners respond to multiple possible scenarios at once. A sudden Crimea-related push amplifies this pressure because the region is politically sensitive and heavily watched by domestic audiences. Any perceived threat forces immediate attention from senior leadership. Analysts also note that international observers closely track Crimea developments, meaning reactions are not just military but diplomatic. Understanding these layers helps explain why even limited actions can produce outsized reactions. This is not about one single move, but about shaping the battlefield environment psychologically and strategically. The current moment highlights how information, perception, and readiness now play as important a role as physical force in modern warfare. Russia's high alert response should not be viewed as panic, but as a standard defensive doctrine applied to high-value regions. Crimea is treated differently than other areas because its loss or destabilization would have serious military and political consequences. When Russian command systems detect unusual patterns, protocols demand rapid escalation to prevent surprise. This includes activating air defense systems, repositioning aircraft, increasing naval patrols, and tightening internal security. Such actions are designed to deter further pressure and signal readiness. From a strategic standpoint, high alert status also serves a messaging purpose. It reassures domestic audiences while warning adversaries that escalation will be met forcefully. However, these measures come at a cost. Maintaining heightened readiness consumes resources, strains personnel, and limits flexibility elsewhere. Ukraine understands this dynamic and often uses indirect pressure to force costly defensive reactions, rather than direct confrontations. Experts describe this as strategic exhaustion. Over time, repeated alerts can reduce effectiveness and increase the risk of miscalculation, which is why analysts pay close attention to frequency and duration of such responses. The current alert level around Crimea suggests that Russian leadership is taking the situation seriously, even if publicly downplaying its significance. This gap between internal actions and external messaging is common in high-tension scenarios, and it underscores why observers are watching this moment closely. International reaction is another important dimension of this developing situation. Any movement connected to Crimea instantly draws attention from NATO countries, regional allies, and global markets. Surveillance activity in the Black Sea region often increases during such moments, as outside powers seek clearer assessments of intent and capability. While official statements may remain limited, diplomatic channels quietly become more active. Governments evaluate whether changes represent short-term pressure or a shift toward broader escalation. Energy markets also respond to instability signals around Crimea. Due to its proximity to key shipping routes and infrastructure, even rumors can influence pricing and insurance costs, which adds another layer of impact beyond the battlefield. Media coverage plays a critical role here. Dramatic headlines can amplify tension, while measured analysis helps audiences understand actual risk levels. This is why responsible framing matters. Conflict narratives can shape public opinion and political decisions. Ukraine benefits from sustained international focus on Crimea, as it reinforces the narrative that the issue remains unresolved and central to the war. Russia, meanwhile, seeks to project control and normalcy, minimizing perceptions of vulnerability. This clash of narratives unfolds alongside real military preparations, creating a complex information environment. Viewers should recognize that what appears as sudden chaos is often the visible surface of longer strategic processes, unfolding quietly over time, with multiple actors responding simultaneously. Looking ahead, the key question is not whether this moment leads to immediate escalation, but how it reshapes strategic calculations on both sides. History shows that pressure around Crimea often results in periods of heightened alert, followed by tactical adjustments, rather than instant large-scale battles. Ukraine may continue applying indirect pressure, forcing Russia to defend multiple points and commit resources to protection rather than expansion. Russia may respond by reinforcing defenses and increasing deterrent signals, hoping to discourage further actions. The risk lies in misinterpretation. When both sides operate at high readiness, small incidents can escalate quickly if communication breaks down. This is why analysts stress the importance of monitoring patterns rather than single events. Sustained high alert status, repeated redeployments, and changes in rules of engagement provide clearer insight into long-term intentions. For now, the situation appears to be one of intense signaling rather than open confrontation, but signaling itself shapes the battlefield. It influences morale, international support, and internal decision-making. Crimea remains a focal point because it concentrates political, military, and symbolic value into one space, making every move more consequential. As this situation evolves, audiences should focus on verified indicators and expert analysis, avoiding emotional conclusions driven by shock headlines. Understanding the broader context allows viewers to see beyond urgency and recognize the deeper strategic dynamics at play in this critical phase of the conflict. Another critical element shaping this moment is information warfare, which now plays a central role in modern conflicts. Activity around Crimea is not only measured in troop movements, but also in messaging silence and selective disclosures. Ukraine often allows ambiguity to grow, forcing Russia to respond defensively without clear targets. This uncertainty pressures command systems and amplifies internal debate. Russia, on the other hand, seeks to project stability even while quietly escalating readiness. These competing approaches influence how audiences interpret events. Online platforms rapidly amplify fragments of information. Sometimes faster than verification can occur. This environment benefits sudden headlines, but complicates accurate understanding. Analysts, therefore, focus on consistency rather than volume. Repeated defensive signals carry more weight than viral claims. Another factor is morale. Maintaining high alert status places stress on personnel, especially when threats remain undefined. Over time, this strain can reduce effectiveness and increase fatigue. Ukraine's strategy appears designed to exploit this imbalance, creating constant pressure without committing to decisive engagement. Crimea's symbolic importance magnifies every signal, turning routine precautions into perceived emergencies. For Russia, allowing any doubt over control carries political risk, which explains rapid reactions even to limited indicators. Viewers should understand that much of this conflict unfolds in perception management rather than direct clashes. The current situation highlights how shaping expectations and reactions has become as important as physical operations, influencing outcomes long before battles begin. From a broader strategic perspective, developments around Crimea influence planning far beyond the immediate region. Military commands on both sides adjust resource allocation based on perceived threats. When Crimea enters a high alert phase, assets are often redirected from other fronts, creating temporary imbalances. Ukraine benefits when Russian forces are forced into defensive postures, limiting offensive flexibility elsewhere. This dynamic explains why indirect pressure can be as effective as direct engagement. International partners also study these patterns closely, assessing how sustained pressure affects long-term stability. Policy decisions, aid delivery, and diplomatic positioning often depend on such signals. Crimea's status ensures that any shift resonates globally, even when physical changes remain limited. Analysts also examine logistics flows, fuel movements, and maintenance cycles, as these reveal more than official statements. Current indicators suggest heightened preparedness rather than imminent escalation, but preparedness itself shapes future options. Once forces mobilize, reversing posture becomes politically and operationally difficult. This can lock both sides into extended periods of tension, increasing the importance of restraint and clear signaling. Understanding this helps explain why even calm official language can coexist with intense military activity. The situation around Crimea demonstrates how modern conflicts operate in layers, blending military readiness, political messaging, and strategic patience, rather than sudden decisive actions alone. Public reaction also plays a role in how these moments evolve. Domestic audiences in both countries closely follow Crimea-related news, shaping expectations placed on leadership. In Russia, maintaining the image of control is crucial. Any hint of vulnerability can carry internal consequences. This encourages rapid defensive responses and careful messaging. Ukraine, meanwhile, seeks to demonstrate capability and resolve, reinforcing the idea that no territory is beyond pressure. International audiences respond differently, focusing on stability, escalation risks, and economic implications. Markets often react to perceived instability even before confirmation emerges. This layered audience effect means that actions are judged across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Leaders must balance military necessity with political signaling. Analysts emphasize that this balancing act increases complexity, especially during high alert phases. Missteps in communication can escalate tension unintentionally, which is why measured language becomes a strategic tool. The current situation illustrates how conflict management now requires coordination across military, political, and informational domains. Crimea remains central because it concentrates all three. As observers, understanding these pressures helps explain why responses may seem disproportionate to visible events. The real battle often occurs in anticipation, reaction, and interpretation, long before any decisive outcome becomes clear. This perspective allows viewers to evaluate developments with greater clarity and less emotional reaction. As we conclude this analysis, it is important to emphasize that moments like this are rarely defined by a single action. They emerge from accumulated pressure, signaling, and strategic calculation. Crimea remains a focal point because it combines military importance with political symbolism, making every development more consequential. Current indicators suggest a phase of intensified readiness, rather than immediate large-scale escalation. But readiness itself reshapes the strategic environment. Ukraine's approach appears focused on sustained pressure and uncertainty, while Russia's response prioritizes deterrence and control. Both strategies aim to influence future options, rather than trigger instant confrontation. For viewers, the key takeaway is to watch patterns, not headlines. Repeated alerts, redeployments, and messaging shifts provide clearer insight than dramatic claims. Understanding this context helps separate urgency from reality, allowing for informed interpretation. As the situation evolves, verified information and expert analysis will remain essential. Emotional reactions benefit algorithms, but distort understanding. Staying informed means staying measured. This channel will continue tracking developments carefully, focusing on facts, context, and long-term implications, rather than speculation. Thank you for watching and staying engaged with responsible analysis. If you found this breakdown useful, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps us deliver clear, fact-based analysis on the world's most critical developments.